Everyone, Temporal here, and today we have some new experimental updates. These are creator experimental updates, which has historically meant they talk to a content creator or some figure in the community to get maybe about half of the changes for the role, and then they just decide that they want to insert the other half of the changes as Blizzard under that content creator's role name. That's kind of what it's historically meant, but let's take a look here, see what we've got. These are usually pretty silly. Maybe we'll get an official tournament like we did with some of the previous ones there that happens on this patch that sees some semi-professional level play. Maybe we'll see something like that, but we also have to be aware that even if these seem like jokes, even if this seems like them pushing the boundaries, testing things for Overwatch 2, we've had sort of one silly thing make it into each version, into the live game from pretty much each of these experimental patches. We had the D.Va remake for a bunch of extra damage. We had the Shatter doing a bunch of extra damage at the epicenter there. Those were originally from some of these silly level creator experimental updates. So something here could absolutely make it in. Multiple things here could absolutely make it in. So let's see what direction they're experimenting with to put into our game or to bring into Overwatch 2. Let's take a look. So first off, we have who was sort of responsible for what, and this is ML7 had support heroes, Lemon Kiwi had tank heroes, Jake had some damage heroes, and Wanted had some damage heroes. Okay, fine, no problem. Fine. The Ryan change is awful, and they put it live. The D.Va change was awful, and they put it live. The D.Va change was originally, you know, like, you can clearly see the thought behind it was we don't want her to get staggered as hard, but that's not what it accomplishes. It's like people who were actually trying not to stagger, who might be trying to finish her, like, oh, a Winston jumps on her to finish her off and loses half their health, or, you know, something like that. A Reaper walks up to finish her off, gets finished. Okay, a Reaper can finish her off from far enough away, but some of these changes are silly. But hey, or have been silly, haven't accomplished what they were really supposed to. Anyway, here we go. So, hero updates. We get some general stuff, which is maximum hit scan fall-off range, increased to 50% from 30%. That's a reversion. It's kind of a version that I honestly don't mind, though you probably need to revert Soldier's buff if you did that, or revert part of it, and you probably want to hit a small nerf, a very small nerf on Ashe, and a meaningful nerf on Cassidy, if you're doing that. That said, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. There is now a plus 75% global cap for movement speed buffs applied to allies. Why is that relevant? I'm concerned. I'm concerned reading that line because that's relevant. Okay. Previously, this would have only affected Lucio, but several other heroes can now increase ally movement speed. Okay, got it. Got it. Added a global 75% cap to movement speed buffs applied to allied heroes. Why is that duplicate? Orisa, Zarya, Lucio, Symmetra. Okay. Tanks. All tank weapon ability and ultimate damage reduced by 50%. All tank weapon ability and ultimate damage reduced by 50%. No! No! Oh my goodness, really? Sorry, I'm reading this blind, guys. I had not seen this. I think I, jumped through in our Discord because it's there. You guys can join the Discord in the description below. I saw the Mercy changes, which is why they're part of the thumbnail there, but like, no. You did not just try to redesign tanks into, like, MMO-style tanks. Your job is to take damage, did you? Is that really what you did? All tank weapon, ability, and ultimate damage reduced by 50%. Oh my goodness. That is not what tanks are. Tanks are not this, like, you shoot at me and I'm doing my job. You don't want your tanks to get shot at. It's just slightly better for them to get shot at than ever. Oh my goodness. Someone doesn't understand the game. Crowd control durations applied to tank are reduced by 50% for the following types: stun, sleep, knockdown, knockback, slow, freeze, root trap. The following crowd controlled abilities are still full duration on tank: Mei Blizzard, Rhine Shatter, Zarya Grab, Winston Primal Rage. Okay, so we're going to meaningfully reduce the CC that they take. We're going to significantly reduce the damage that they do. Are we going to give them... We are going to give them huge durability buffs. We think we're playing an MMO. We literally think we're playing World of Warcraft or something like this and how we're designing this. I mean, it's an experimental. If I thought there was no chance any of this would stick, I guess it would be like, yeah, have fun. It's your experimental. You can see if maybe you'll find something interesting and unique over there that we wouldn't otherwise have found. You can mess around with it, except that there's too much of a history of wacky experimental stuff making it live without it getting huge buy-in. So armor increased from 200 to 400. So that's not a health conversion as best I can tell. That's a straight increase. So he would now have 700 on his health bar, with 400 of it being armor, 300 being health. Unless I flipped that. Was he at 300? I don't remember. So that would be, he's gained an extra 200 health there. Okay. He's gained an extra 200 health there in the form of armor, which is even better. That will make him quite durable. Enemies hit by Fire Strike now receive 50% less healing. You think it's an MMO tank. You literally are like, here, let me Mortal Strike. Like, Reinhardt is a warrior with a shield. Let me have him Mortal Strike things and not do damage. He's going to do utility-based things. Like, you could design your game that way. It's very different. It doesn't really fit in a shooter, but you could design your game this way. Charge can now pin multiple targets. Sandwich stacked pins. Movement speed is increased by 40% for the first 2 seconds of the charge. Can now be canceled by pressing the ability input again. Yeah, charge cancel we knew was coming. I'm a little surprised that we're considering charge a movement speed increase. Like, because that means it now has to worry about the cap. I don't really think of charge as a movement speed. Is this going to slow down Genji dash because Genji dash is Genji moving? Is that what we're going to see? Like, I don't like that even thought process right there, but okay. Blah says, you just ignore the tank and kill everything else since they're not really a threat. Correct. The only way that you can keep tanks relevant if you make tanks not do damage is you give tanks things that are either that effectively force them to be attacked or let them disrupt a ton. PvP tanking, when it exists, and it does not always exist, is generally going to be heavily involved in breaking up opponents' burst cycles. So it involves giving the tanks lots of CC. I don't think there's going to be a strong desire to give tanks lots of CC. I think they're trying to reduce CC. So I don't think that going, oh yeah, your Reinhardt can jump over here and stun the Genji that was trying to take out your Ana, and then he can immediately swap targets halfway across the battlefield with a charge to go apply a slow to the Tracer that was trying to blink in, and then he can, you know, jump back and spam auto attacks on the Ana to not let her be able to clear cast her heals. I mean, you know, that's kind of what we're talking about when you go, hey, if you're gonna have tanking in a PvP type environment. So that isn't just, hey, your tanks are a little bit more durable but have high damage. If we're gonna give them 50% less damage, they're meaningless, and you have 50% less damage, ton of extra durability. This Fire Strike causing things to receive 50% less healing is not good enough to balance out 50% less damage. And you might be going, oh no, but is that plus them being more durable? They're gonna be ignored. Blah is correct. If this Reinhardt redesign is what they all look like. Okay. Right. If you have things like taunts, like SWTOR, Star Wars The Old Republic did a good job with taunts, where you could put like a taunt on something, and then if they attack anything, even in PvP, and if they attack anything but the target that taunted them, they do 30% less damage or 40% less damage to the target, to any target that they're attacking for the next 4 seconds, 6 seconds, whatever, that isn't the target they're attacking. 6 seconds would be an eternity in Overwatch, but that sort of thing, you know, that's one mechanic to do tanking in a PvP type environment. This does not work. You have to give them CC or very strong debuffing stuff that's stronger than this. Like very strong buffing and debuffing stuff. Like if Orisa had a full-time supercharger down and was durable, sure, that would work, because now it's like, well, I kind of want to take out the Orisa to get rid of the supercharger if she was the supercharger, because their team's just blowing stuff up without it, but I don't think they're going to be willing to do that. Also, hey Temporal, it's been forever. Hey, it's Godfrey. Hope you're doing well. If tanks were meant to be shot at, why would you give them more health armor? They're absolutely there to be shot at. No, it's like A tank isn't oh, I'm a tank. It's not this MMO style. The dragon, fights your tank. The tank turns him away. And then the tank takes, 70% of the incoming damage for the raid or for the team or whatever. That's not how shooters work. Shooters would be, hey, your tank has some body armor, but they're still not remotely fully protected. They're not, oh, I can go charging down the middle, I can bash in the door and walk through and expect to not die. No, you still instantly expect to die in those situations. That's how most shooters are built, even when you get a little tankier, even when you get hero shooters, role shooters. They didn't design tanks, at least previously, in a way to allow them to be able to do that. They designed them to be a bit more durable, generally have some range limitations, and generally have some issues finishing targets off, so a little bit of finishing power issues, but do generally as much consistent damage as most of the other heroes. Just like deep supports like Zen, like BAP, etc. don't do wildly less damage than DPS either. DPS mostly get the consistency for finishing stuff off. But okay, here we go. Orisa. Armor increased from 250 to 500. Doesn't matter unless she does something. Let's see. Fortify now grants 40% increased movement speed. Allies within 8 meters have 20% increased movement speed and 20% damage reduction. So she's a support. She's an unkillable support. She's gonna use Fortify to give her team faster movement speed. And you'd never even think about trying to remove her, trying to eliminate her to get rid of that movement speed buff, because she's going to be fortified during it with increased armor. This isn't a tank, this is a support. Halt. No longer fires a projectile, now attaches a halt tendril to the nearest enemy within 5 meters and tethers them to Orisa for 1.5 seconds. What does that mean? Does that mean they can't run away for 1.5 seconds? Does that mean they have a certain distance that they can run away? Does that mean they're leashed and they're stuck within 5 meters of Orisa for 1.5 seconds? Does that still yoink them to Orisa? What does that do? Supercharger no longer grants allies a damage buff, now slows all enemies within 10 meters by 40%. So this is like MC's suggestion to my Mercy thread, where he was like, hey, they should send Mercy back to her roots, make her like the Wisp character in Dota with all sorts of tethers and things like that. They went that direction with Orisa instead here. Okay. This is a little better designed as a tank. Like, this isn't a tank, but this is a little bit better designed as a hero than Reinhardt was. This, hey, you're going to receive 50% less healing for 4 seconds. Don't care. This is a little bit better because people are still just going to ignore Reinhardt. I promise. Orisa's a little bit better here because 20% movement speed for her team during Fortify, halt, effectively not letting people run away, I think, sort of locking someone in. It's as good as a stun. Like, it's not as good as a stun. They can still use their abilities while they're affected by it, things like that. But I'll have to see how it interacts with, like, can you blink away? Can you dash away? Can you jump pack away when you're halted by this thing for 1.5 seconds? If not, this is going to be amazing for going, nope, we're going to lock you in. If we get into range of someone with our Fortify Rush, Lucio plus Orisa, Fortify Speed Boost onto something, and then halt it, that target is not going to be allowed to get away, and it's probably going to go down. And then Supercharger, slowing enemies additionally. Like, this is actually okay. I wouldn't consider this a tank in the traditional Overwatch sense. You could consider it a tank, but this is a much better designed hero than the Reinhardt so far. Where, hey, there's ways for this to work. It's a bulky support. You can think of a tank as a support because, sometimes supports are tanky, sometimes tanks are supporty. If you look at something like League, we're definitely looking, not so much FPS, more MOBA here, but this is much better designed than Reinhardt. And no, you will not be trying to shoot at the Orisa. The Orisa will not be the one getting shot at. No one's going to try to take out the Orisa. It's going to be, hey, we have to take out other things that aren't your Orisa. Okay. Zarya. Health increased from 200 to 300. Health increased from 200 to 300 Armor increased from 0 to 300. Shield health pool removed. Okay, so total health pool is 600 now. Has lost the shielding, but has gained 300 armor. Okay. Particle Barrier provides up to 50% movement speed boost to Zarya based on current energy with 0.5% movement speed per 1 energy. Okay, so a scaling movement speed boost, and I don't think this is a redesign, this is an addition, right? So it still absorbs the energy, and then it can give boost to allies as well. Okay, so that's got some interest. Got some interest. She's now going to have 600 health, 300 of it being armor. So she'll need a little bit more healing than usual in some ways because her armor doesn't, regenerate. But the reality is she's going to, take a lot less damage because she has armor. She's overall more bulky, which is going to make people a little less willing to shoot at her. She's not as much more bulky as the Orisa and Reinhardt silliness. She'll do 50% less damage. I'm not convinced that she's ever going to be... she's not going to do any damage. A 0 energy Zarya melting you with 50% reduced damage is just yeah, okay. I'm still not going to shoot at you because I'm not going to give you any energy. Zarya plays in such a way that she has to be threatening enough, and she can, even at 0 energy in the current game. She has to be threatening enough as Zarya with her... with her giant weapon here. Well, okay, that's not a good Zarya. As Zarya stick figures are hard, apparently. Zarya here has to be able to go, yep, I've got my big turbo weapon here that's going to go beam, whatever. She has to be able to do that, and that has to be scary enough, and she's going to have a little bit of a mohawk, I suppose, whatever. She has to be able to go, hey, I'm scary enough that you don't like me, that you try to peel me off of doing damage to you by shooting at me. I don't think you're ever going to get, not ever, but I don't think you're going to get me to shoot at a Zarya that doesn't already have energy very often. So she's going to have to get projected barrier value before she's allowed to get personal barrier value, and that's going to make her more tied to her team. If this was Overwatch 2, where she could, use her barriers back and forth, that could work maybe. But I look at this, in the current Overwatch 1 implementation with these changes, she's not going to be threatening, and she's not going to be able to do anything herself to get energy. She's going to be dependent on her team to get her that first bit of energy. Once she has some energy, once she has 40 energy, 50 energy, 60 energy, she'll probably be threatening enough to get people to shoot at her, to do her job, to be able to personal bubble, etc. But people are literally just going to not shoot at Zarya. I wouldn't. That used to be way easier said than done, and people used to say, oh, just don't shoot at Zarya, blah, blah, blah. No, Zarya can force herself to get shot at because she just plays aggressive enough to warrant it. And she'll be able to play more aggressive because she has more total bulk here, and that'll help a little bit, but not enough to make up for the 50% damage nerf in terms of how she has to be able to run cycles, how she has to be threatening enough to get energy. But obviously this is powerful. As she gets more energy, she makes her allies move faster and faster. That's going to be quite powerful on top of them having a damage boost. That's a serious support ability right there. That is pretty darn solid. Up to 50%. Up to 50% faster while having a 200 damage bubble, a 200 damage absorption bubble. Obviously, they can break the bubble to get rid of the speed buff, but that's in some ways okay with her because she gets more energy. $100 energy would be 90 DPS with the reduction. 0 charge would be 25, I think, or 40, something crazy low. Right, it's something crazy low that you're just why am I going to shoot at this thing, especially when it has armor? Okay. That said, I can see how this here will work. I think they've just... I think, and I could be wrong, it's possible that she's bulky enough, combined with she'll have the speed to help her get out, which will allow her to get incredibly aggressive with that bulk and speed, and that'll make up for how low her damage is to be able to get her going, to rev her engine to get going in the first place, but I'm worried about it. I don't think she will be able to. I think if people figure it out, she's not going to be able to play the game until she's been able to get energy off of allies. She won't be able to get energy off of herself, and that's not great for her because she likes to be able, truth be told, Zaryas would prefer to sort of use their own bubble for energy and their team bubble a little more for outs. She's not going to be able to hold her team bubble for outs. It's going to be a little bit more like Roadhog, who can't hold his hook for cancels and has to go fishing with it, has to take opportunities. It'll be a bit more like that. But that's not necessarily a problem. This is still better than Reinhardt. I think Orisa is the most interesting of these, but this is still better than Reinhardt. So, Sigma. Armor increased from 0 to 200, shield health pool removed. So only 100 total more on his health bar. And we picked up armor, 200 of it, in exchange for 100 shield. So he's had the least bulk increase, unless we get more. Oh, this is how we got our bulk back. Cooldown reduced to minimum 0.01 seconds. So experimental barrier is back to being instant deploy and redeploy. Okay. So, Hyperspheres now fires 1 projectile per shot, down from 2. Recovery reduced from 1.2 seconds to 0.5 seconds, so they're getting rid of his little mini reload thing there. Okay. Accretion, that's rock, now receives an additional charge on a successful hit. Spending an additional charge puts the ability on cooldown. Okay. I don't know how I feel about that. Kinetic Grasp. Sigma is now immune to crowd control while Kinetic Grasp is active. Okay, so Kinetic Grasp is a much better defensive ability. It used to have too many problems in terms of, oh, you get hooked out of it, things like that, but it is a much better defensive ability. It's still relatively small in the area it covers, though. Whereas a single shot instead of 2, which will probably be would net be a DPS increase for him. Obviously, he's still net way down because, with the recovery, because they've cut tank damage in half. Receives an additional charge on spending, so if you hit your rock, you get another rock. Okay. And then his experimental barrier, he's just going to be able to, literally spam up and down. It'll still have the same amount of shields, it sounds like, but it is no internal cooldown on it. Plus that little bit of a defensive monstrosity. Yeah, okay. Just between these two, not with this. Okay, Wrecking Ball. What are we doing with Wrecking Ball? Sigma, I don't have incredibly strong feelings on. Wrecking Ball. Grappling Claw no longer automatically detaches after 6 seconds. That'll feel better. Can no longer reach maximum speed, deal damage, or knock back enemies if Grappling Claw has been active for more than 6 seconds. Minefield. Minefield now blinds enemies for 2.5 seconds when damaging enemies. When blinded, the player is unable to see anything except for their HUD. Okay, I don't mind us putting blind into the game. Pile Drive now reduces the cooldown of Adaptive Shield by 1 second for each enemy hit. But I don't care, because he's not dangerous. Like, again, if he does 50% less damage, his knockback hasn't been reduced, so he'll still get to hit the knockbacks, but he still has his knockback from months ago at this point reduction. So the idea is he'll still hit pile drives, he'll still hit disruptions. This is still a tank hero. He's still going to disrupt people, not let them move around very well. This is kind of like that. Knock people out from behind cover, that sort of thing. He is very hard to take down. And his bulk addition is going to come from him getting his adaptive shield cooldown reduced. Sure. And then Minefield does this. So Minefield gets some CC. Okay. This is a hero. I'm okay with this. This is the sort of thing that, yeah, that could make sense. Ace Attack says it's even more unfun to play tanks because they enforce space with their threat of damage, not just by HP pool. Right. Like they need their threat of damage, or you have to give them pretty heavy CC disruption, things like that. Like Ball sort of does work in that model because Ball can, even with low damage, go, I'm going to knock you around with boops. I'm going to pile drive you up for allies to finish off. I'm going to have bulk and you want to get rid of me because you don't like how much I'm knocking your team around. He sort of works in that model. Reinhardt with just a mortal strike type thing to reduce incoming healing does not. Orisa, you might want to get rid of her because of the speed boost shenanigans she'll enable, the rooting that she'll enable, but you won't be able to, and it's just too far gone in terms of you won't be able to. It makes way more sense to focus someone else first, which is okay. That's okay for a tank. Sure. Okay. Roadhog. Health decrease from 600 to 300. Armor increase from 0 to 300. So same total amount of health pool, but 300 of it is armor now. Hook now pulls enemies 75% faster. That doesn't matter that much. Take a breather. No longer heals for a flat value of 300. Now heals 100 health plus an additional 100 health per nearby ally. Roadhog gains 25% damage reduction when near allied damage heroes. This buff is shared with all allies within 5 meters. Roadhog gains 50% damage reduction when near allied tank heroes. Why? Whole Hog no longer knocks back opponents, now cancelable. That's a huge buff to Whole Hog. Whole Hog does fine damage. Like, Whole Hog does fine damage, so having it not knock back opponents and be cancelable, huge buff that we're looking at there. Pulls enemies in 75% faster. He won't be able to eliminate people that he pulls in because of the global damage nerf that tanks are taking. And they're doing everything they can to force him to play with the team. Who did the tank notes? Someone who doesn't understand the game? Lemon Kiwi. Okay. That's not like some huge slight on Lemon Kiwi, but like Jake wouldn't have put these out, for example, looking at that list there. And also, nothing says this was actually Lemon Kiwi. This could have been Blizzard. Remember, they have a tendency of going, oh yeah, so-and-so was responsible for this, but Blizzard just did half of them by themselves and stuck the other person's name on it. So, here's the thing. Like, this is all to try to force Roadhog to play with his team, to be an actual tank, because Roadhog's not tanking. Is Sigma tanking if he plays an off angle? Well, you guys are smart. You guys are on this channel. You know that, yes, Sigma is tanking when Sigma plays an off angle and threatens from an off angle and forces attention away. That's how tanking has traditionally worked in Overwatch. It hasn't been about super heavy CC. It hasn't been about, yes, you shoot at me and I take all the damage. It's been about, I bait your attention away and I have a little bit more bulk, a little bit more health, some defensive cooldown resources that can cause me to survive for a second or two. A couple of you looking at me can cause me to break the sightline first and take a little bit more damage than my team, that sort of thing, or to open an angle somewhere else, again, this is the big one, cause you to look away from my team so my team doesn't get spammed. Like, oh, okay, tanking is really attention baiting in this game rather than actually tanking, that sort of thing. And this is to try to force Roadhog to play with his team and properly tank for his team. And he's going to have more bulk because he got 300 armor in place of 300 of his health. His breather will heal more if people are actually deathballing and stacking together. He'll gain silly amounts of damage reduction while using Tanker Breather if people are stacked with him. And he'll also share that silly amount of damage reduction, which he can use, so he can use Breather to rotate through chokes, to rotate through kill boxes, things like that. Which, you know, sort of works, but is sort of the same thing as Winston dropping a Winston bubble to help your team rotate through a kill box, a choke. You don't really want to do it. This this isn't going to be amazing because, like, oh yes, I'm Roadhog, I can pull things into my team. You have to pull in the direction of your team, and your team has to be with you, which means congratulations, shields are a thing, and now we're playing to break shields again. Because Reinhardt shields, Orisa shields, these sorts of things are actually going to stop you from being a relevant hero. Going around shields is better in this game than going, than trying to break them. Going around them or diving through them is just better. He's now gonna have to worry about shields if he's actually, and he's gonna mostly play with his team. Maybe people will figure out that the right way to play him is actually on an off angle with an Ashe and just accept that, hey, you're getting just this. And just for one, and you're pulling it in, and hey, that sort of thing. You're sort of helping enforce that. Yeah, I see it. I see what they're trying to do. I see they're really hard trying to make him not feel like this. Oh, well, he's not really a tank, and it's just DPS players that are locking him and doing this, and they're so bad, and when we have Roadhog, we don't have a tank. But people feel that same way about Wrecking Ball, and Wrecking Ball in current Overwatch is definitely a tank. Like, people just don't understand how tanking works, where it is attention baiting. It is dragging attention, that sort of thing, and Roadhog does that. He really does. Everyone was going, hey, no, they've got to be Reinhardt or maybe Orisa for them to understand it. Or maybe a frontlining Winston. Or, that gold or silver D.Va that stands in the front line and you wish would actually take high ground because they're actually just feeding the opponents a ton of ult charge and causing you to feel like you need double flex support healing them. Okay, so this is not actually terribly good design. It'll do what they want it to, of forcing him to play with the team more, but people are going to be like, oh, this hero sucks. Shields work. Shields are good. We're playing Shield Watch. I don't like it. Let's not do this, because that happens, and all this bulk that he's offering to the team, he's only offering during Take a Breather. This pull enemies in 75% faster helps him be self-stunned a little less time, but it didn't reduce the cooldown on his hook or anything, and he would actually need a hook cooldown reduction. Like, for this design of Roadhog to work, he would need to take like probably 2 seconds off of his hook cooldown, which people would hate. That said, this is pretty good. This is pretty darn good. Shade XMC says, Roadhog in my games hard carries the lobby 99% of the time and plays Deathbelly, so those changes are not welcome. Should not be able to play Deathbelly and hard carry the matches, there, Shade. Like, that should be, hey, cover works against him and his team, because this is, again, encouraging his team to stack, that sort of thing. And if he's playing against a stacked team, like, if you're playing against a team that's playing in one direction, historically speaking, Reinhardt would be better than Roadhog. Like, if the entire team is going to stand in front of you and not take angles, great, I want to play a Reinhardt and press W at that team. Or I want to play Reinhardt Winston and press W at that team and crush it. Reinhardt suffers when opponents start spreading out, but if this Roadhog is going to encourage them to play together, he's not going to have a good time. Now, obviously, this Reinhardt is not very good, but hey. So yeah, this is not a terribly great Roadhog change. Like, it does what they want it to do. I totally get what they're going for, but it's not going to make him a terribly good hero. D.Va. D.Va got slow fall. Okay. Primary fire damage reduced from 2 to 1 damage per bullet. So nothing, because we halved damage and then we gave her another damage nerf on top of it. Now grants 30% ult charge for blocking an enemy ultimate projectile. Come on. They really are like, tanks should be tanking. Tanking is what they do. So now tanking an ult, canceling an ult, that's how you're going to get ult charge. Are we going to go, hey, when Reinhardt blocks damage on his shield, he gets ult charge next? Is that what we're going to do? Boosters cooldown reduced from 4 seconds to 2 seconds. Okay. That works a little bit. You'd probably also need to reduce the internal cooldown on Defense Matrix, because right now it's a little bit too long. But this sort of combination of super short booster cooldown plus Defense Matrix, that gets you into the type of tank territory that they're trying to design towards. Of like, hey, your tank is interrupting, is creating, is doing a bunch of interrupts, doing a bunch of CC, that sort of stuff to mess with the opponents. And super short booster cooldown plus defense matrix is kind of that. And she does no damage, but she can at least turn off mercy auto healing, turn off shield recovery on things like Zen, things like that. This is sort of the right design for what they're going for. So maybe they've got hope here. They really are going like hard into this. No, we want MMO style PvP tanking, which by the way has historically been pretty hit or miss. In some metas it makes sense, in a lot of metas it doesn't. But hey, we've got something interesting here. Boosting a 2-second cooldown seems excessive. I guess with the boop damage reduced, it could be okay. I mean, she's not going to do any damage. They, like, gutted her damage with it. Her boop isn't, like, extreme. Hasn't been extreme for quite a while on her boosters. It's a short cooldown, don't get me wrong, but all she's going to do is show up with defense matrix, and currently she has a long enough internal cooldown on defense matrix that'll be disruptive, don't get me wrong, but it won't be, oh my goodness, I can't play the game, which is kind of what tanking, when tanking is viable in PvP and MMORPGs, looks like. D.Va is a DM bot. This turns her into even more of one. Winston, armor increased from 150 to 300. Not sure that's enough bulk. Jump pack now slightly launches enemy into the air upon landing. It already did that. Primal Rage. Health increased from 1,000. Health gained increased from 1,000 to 1,700. Health decays by 75 per second to a minimum of 350. Holding primary fire input now charges up a punch, which can increase the knockback by 100%. This won't be a good enough hero. He's gonna do no damage. Even when he's cleaving, he's gonna do no damage. By the way, did we change it so that these guys get their ults faster? Or are tanks just gutted because we decreased their damage by 50%? We decreased their damage by 50%. Do they just now get no ults unless they're D.Va and eat opposing ults? Did I see a global change here? I didn't. So unless they adjusted the ult charge required and didn't tell us that, ugh, yuck, yup. No ult charge increase. Yikes, yikes. So Winston's gonna suck. Unless they made this like a pile drive level knock-up, like 3/4 as strong as pile drive in terms of how it knocks people up and sort of locks them down a little bit, CCs them. Winston's gonna suck because making him more bulky doesn't do enough. Winston needs to be able to hold enemy in a situation where a Genji can dash through them, where someone else can hit a body shot, whatever, to finish them off, where a Tracer can come in, where he needs to be able to hold people for a few seconds at low health. That's sort of what he does. Or he needs to be able to jump in and confirm eliminations, that sort of thing. And he's lost those things in exchange for, again, if he knocks people up 3/4 as high as Hammond's pile drive does, okay, he's a more precise version, maybe sort of kind of Hammond. And then he's got the Primal Rage, which is still knockbacks. It's knockbacks. I don't care about the bigger health pool. You can increase the knockback, not the damage. It's not turning it into a Falcon Punch one-hit KO. It's not turning it into a Jigglypuff Rest. It's turning it into, hey, I can knock you back really far, which is like, unless you're just like, I'm knocking you from point A to point B levels of far, no. This is going to be a bad hero. So, okay, so we've looked at our tanks. The tanks that work, garbage. Perfectly fine. Questionable. I think this is close to a design that could absolutely work for what they're trying to do. I don't know what to do with this. This is fine. He was the closest to the design that they were sort of already looking for. This is not good, but it's going to be a lot better than Reinhardt. This has become the design that they're looking for, though they probably need to turn down the defense matrix internal cooldown just a little bit. Garbage. Again, unless this is like that good, and I don't think it is, this is like Reinhardt levels of bad. So, garbage. Garbage. Reasonable. Reasonable. They tried middle of the pack. Probably middle of the pack. And this is going to be like knife's edge where they got it right or they didn't, and I don't think they did. I think at first it'll probably do okay, and then as people realize, wait, you're not scary until you've been able to bubble someone else, but you should pretty reliably be able to bubble someone else. She's just really dependent on her team. Lucio can now out-heal Winston damage without boosting. That's how Winston should be. I'm glad they fixed it. Lucio 100% counters Winston, right? Kind of silly. Kind of silly. Okay. So that's our tanks, and you can really see that they've really gone with this MMO-style design of tanking, or that's what they're trying for, where we're really scaling back the damage, and we're going to have lots of interrupts, lots of not letting people do stuff. I don't think people are going to like that more. Like, there's been a big cry for less of that, except maybe they'll be just fine with it because they didn't actually give enough interrupts, enough control to the tanks in exchange for having their damage here. They're like, have some health, but that health only matters if you're annoying enough that people actually would consider going through you to get rid of you otherwise. Like, this Reinhardt, even if he had no increased health, I'd ignore it. Like, even if you left it, even if you completely removed this buff, this increased armor from 200 to 400, I would still ignore the Reinhardt until he was the last person on the field. So it's not actually a buff. Like, yes, it's still a tiny buff because there's, you know, the occasional situation where you get caught in a 1v1, but the tanks can't win 1v1s anymore. So, like, no, this is not a buff. This is potentially a buff because, hey, you would have liked to remove her from the field because she can do scary things. It was always a little tough, but maybe you could have forced Fortify early and then she can't use it to help her team. And this will be harder to do so now. He didn't get help there. He got the pile drive. The pile drive gives him more adaptive shield access. Sure, he's annoying enough that people would like to be able to remove him. We didn't increase D.Va's durability? Huh. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, so they just don't know what they're doing. She's gonna get shredded. Like, if she's supposed to be jumping around the battlefield constantly, yeah, she can use her boosters to leave, but she can't have to do... Oh, that's not going to work for her. Okay. Okay. Fine. Fine. On to damage. Let's see what we have. Well, let me do a quick catch-up. I've got a lot of you here. Let me do a quick catch-up now that we've talked about our tanks. Overall, it seems like Temporal has a really positive view of these changes and can't wait to play. Does it now, James? I mean, it could be okay. I'm actually, you know, like, I'm okay with them experimenting in the direction of, hey, let's make it more MMO-like. And some of them, they seem to understand what they have to do. Most of the D.Va redesign, you probably did need to give her more health. The Orisa redesign, portions of the Zarya redesign. You know, some of these seem like they get it, and then others, they've totally missed the plot, or this is totally useless, this doesn't work. This is not good enough. It was an oversight not to reduce cooldowns and increase ult charge with a massive minus 50% damage. D.Va is already health plus armor. I know D.Va's already health plus armor, but we increased everyone else's bulk. Like, we increased everyone else's bulk. Even Wrecking Ball got a bulk increase here in that he got, you know, his adaptive shield cooldown effectively reduced. As a tank player, I hate it. Yeah, completely redesigns tanks. Tanks are no longer bulky damage dealers who sort of struggle to finish stuff off. They're now full-on, you know, MMO style. The enemy I would love for the enemy to be shooting at me, which they're only going to do if you can be annoying enough to force them to, and Reinhardt can't do that. Zarya can't do that, at least until she has pretty darn high energy. I'm not at all convinced Sigma will be able to do that. He's got some really good defenses here, and he can project his experimental barrier to get in the fight even if he's not being focused, so maybe that'll work out for him. Roadhog, you know, is gonna just be like, hey, there's a shield in your way. What do you do? Winston, you're just gonna ignore him. Like, oh, you're doing 30 damage per second to me. Yay? Let me add in some armor and you're doing nothing to me. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sigma's damage probably got reduced the least. Right. Tracer is busted now, though. No, we haven't seen damage yet. Tanks are supposed to stand in the front line and block shot / smile. Funny, Goggins, funny. Wait, so DPS fall off nerf is reverted? Yeah, this is effectively a reversion if memory serves. They went from... It's currently at 30%. For this experimental patch, they're reverting it to 50% or the fall off range, and I believe that's what it was before that nerf we got a few months ago that hurt the hit scan, except Soldier, who got countering buffs. Hey, I think we can move on from there. Dry Bubble gives move speed. Return of Beyblade comps. Yep. Very much. Reaper's one of your prime targets for it. Definitely. You just want them to try nerfing everything instead of buffing everything for once? I'd be interested in seeing that. You want people to hate playing tank even more? Okay. Shade says, tanks and MMOs don't usually get things like slows and often do a lot of damage. Not sure I get it. No. In PvP MMO, tanks regularly get things like slows. It's actually kind of unusual in MMO PvP for your tanks to do a ton of damage if they're in tank specs, things like that. They're usually a lot more about control. Roots, interrupts, stuns, that sort of thing. Okay. Temporal is a former Winston main, wants to try that Doomfist punch at half damage. I mean, I want to try that. I want Winston to get a Doomfist punch, not this knockback thing. Okay, into damage. Swift Strike now has 2 charges. Refunds 1 charge per elimination. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Who thinks that's okay? What? Damage reduced from 50 to 30. Okay, that helps. It's still a giant buff. So the problem with Genji is he's an engine. If you can get his engine going, he really goes. Small buffs can make him go wild. This is not a small buff. Giving him a second Swift Strike because A, it's his best mobility tool, B, it's damage, and it's damage that can go through much of the enemy team. You can Swift Strike through both supports at once. You can Swift Strike through a Death Ball, that sort of thing. Get a ton of Volt Charge off of it, do a ton of damage to a team. If we had a good Winston existing right now that was zapping 3 or 4 people and he double Swift Strike through them, it would just be a joke. And he'd be like, of course, in 2 Swift Strikes, even if they're 30 damage, he's going to get an elimination, which means he gets a 3rd Swift Strike, which will be at least 1 more elimination. Yeah. Activating Dragon Blade also refunds 1 charge, and then Dragon Blade's duration reduced from 6 seconds to 3 seconds. After Dragon Blade ends, Genji gains 40% faster attack speed for 6 seconds. Okay, so we tried to move some power away from the blade portion of Dragon Blade to the other part of his kit, and we're not going to understand how silly powerful his non-blade play is going to be. I don't care. You might be going, oh, but double dash is only 60 damage. That's only 10 more damage than... It's only 10 more damage than a single dash was. No, the flexibility of having 2 dashes, being able to not all in with your dash, just like Tracer has 3 blinks and Genji has 1 dash, like, oh, now Genji has 2 dashes, that is a huge buff to him. And then after Dragon Blade ends, you get faster attack speed for 6 seconds. That'll open up more elimination potential. His engine is going to go pretty wild, unless the other DPS are even more ridiculous. It's 2 charges, and he gets, oh wait, another, I mean... He's always gotten, well, he used to get his cooldown reset. Now I'm assuming he gets the 1 charge instead. Like, he always had the reset engine, and he is still a reset engine. It's just, I think now, if I'm reading this correctly, he gets 1. He doesn't get both back for an elimination there. It's like giving a Doom a 4th cooldown. Right. Genji is now Tracer. Yeah, I know some people who are going to be happy about this. Okay. Doomfist. New additional passive. Using a basic ability that deals no damage to enemies reduces the current cooldown of other 2 abilities by 1. New additional passive. Using a basic ability that deals no damage to enemies, reduces the current cooldown of the other two abilities by 1 second. So your rollouts are better, because if you have to do like a halfway across the map double cooldown rollout, it starts cycling back faster. If you try to do staging, your cooldown cycle back faster. Seismic Slam can now be canceled after 0.2 second delay by pressing the ability input. Okay, so we're just going wild with how fast-paced we want this game to be. Okay. Echo, new passive, Assimilation. Echo heals for 30% of her current missing health when she gets a final... We decided that one reset hero wasn't enough. Genji, like... With how tough it was to balance Genji with his reset engine, we decided that we wanted a second reset engine. So, Echo's now going to get 30% of her missing health when she gets a final blow. Okay. This healing generates ultimate charge. This passive also affects her duplicate copy. Feed hard with your duplicate. Feed hard with your duplicate. You're going to get so much work done. And glide head at speed increased by 50%. Echo be broken, all right. That is wild. He heals for 30% of her current missing health when she gets a final blow. Well, hold on. If it's 30% of her current missing health, so is that like 30% of her current missing health? So if she's at 100 out of 200 life, is she going to get 33 life off of an elimination? Because if that's the case, that's not a huge deal, because it can actually never really heal her to full. Like, you could go, I'm at 199, I get an elimination. But if it's 30% of her total, if she heals 30% of her total, that would be a bigger deal. This could be small, but I suspect it's not. I suspect it's actually 30% of her life. I'm reading what it says, but I kind of doubt it, because it would be pretty minor if it's actually current. Yeah, if it's current missing health, 30% of her current missing health. If she's at half health, you get an elimination, she heals 30 health. Sure, that's pretty big. I guess it turns her a little bit more into a dual bot, because if you win with 50 health out of 150, you actually get a pretty decent amount of health. If you have 100 or less health, it's a meaningful amount of health that you get back. But like, I eliminated someone when I had 150 health. Doesn't do much, because you're getting 30% of 50 back, which really isn't very much. I can see this not being as wild as I think. It's 33% of current. I tested. Oh, so she heals 33% of her current. Well, it's 33, not 30? Okay. If she's like a tank, yeah. If she's copied a tank, that is a bigger deal. It's true. So that's going to aim her even more during her duplicate at copying tanks, which was already what she did. But maybe that's less of a problem, because copying tanks won't get you ults very fast, because tanks don't generate ult very fast. I mean, she generates ults much, much faster, even as a copy, but she won't be able to just go self-destruct, because D.Va generates ult charge so slow, even if she's multiplying it. Why would you duplicate a tank? They're mostly throw picks now. I mean, duplicating an Orisa for a quick fortify push for your team could be useful. Right, yeah. So, okay, this isn't as big a deal as I thought. It's silly, because it's hard to balance these sort of things. I'm not sure they wanted more of them. And I'm still not quite sure what you mean there, Moonabator, in terms of heals 33% of her current health. So, like, if she has 100 health, she would heal 30 health? Is that what we're saying? Because, of the 100 that she has, she heals 30? Okay. If she has 10 health, she would heal 3 health, so now she'd have 13 health? Okay, that's a pretty minor passive then. Mei, fully frozen targets take 100% quick melee damage from all sources. Okay. 100% increased quick melee damage. That's just fluff. Ice Wall now launches heroes into the air when built underneath them. Okay, fine. Silliness. Cryo Freeze size increased by 50%. So she's going to do more blocking with Cryo Freeze. Fine. Whatever. Pharah. Rocket launcher now applies a 25% movement speed reduction for 0.5 seconds. I assume that means to targeted hits. Yeah, 30% of the HP she has right now. What is that? Yeah, it's a silly thing that we're looking at here, Nuntype. It is. So rocket impacts now apply a 25% movement speed reduction for 0.5 seconds. So the idea is if you hit one rocket, I hope you have to hit the direct to get the 25% movement speed reduction on them and not just an indirect. Rocket impact knockback increased by 100%. That's fine. I don't mind. Knocking people around more with her rockets, totally fine. This makes hitting your follow-up shots easier. It's a way to buff her. It's also a way to make her a little bit more different than Echo and things that she could do. I could potentially be okay with this. Concussive Blast now has 2 ability charges. Enemies knocked back by Concussive Blast become immune to all knockbacks for 1.5 seconds. Okay. There's probably some interesting mixes with Doomfist there where, like, what happens if you become immune to knockbacks, like you get knocked into something and then a Doomfist punches you and that sort of messes up Doomfist's ability to combo. But hey, that's okay. I mean, Doomfist has had to deal with things like that against Orisas and such. So okay. Yeah, obviously anytime that someone gets 2 charges where they had 1 before is going to be a significant buff. And obviously these are significant buffs for Pharah together. I'd be interested in exploring either one of them and maybe taking something out of her kit to balance for her getting either one of them. They could be interesting things. Obviously both is too much, but this whole patch is silly, so hey, why not? Yeah, anytime you split up, give someone charges of something, that gives her the ability, and it's enemies knocked back, it's not her. So she can still double Concussive Blast if she needs to aggressively reposition or hugely reposition to save her life, etc. Junkrat no longer has audible footsteps. The peg leg no longer has audible footsteps. Weird. Increased movement speed when detaching from walls. Fine. Okay. Like, I look at this, there's no reason for Junkrat not to have audible footsteps. That's a silly change, unless Junkrat starts floating. Like, unless Junkrat starts meditating and floating like it's Zenyatta, he should have footsteps. I don't like it, but whatever. And then, obviously, we're looking here at, hey, we want to make it a little bit better. People have gotten better at adjusting to the speed of Riptire. Riptire was hard to deal with when it first got super buffed. It got scaled back a tiny bit since then, but players have just adapted to that speed, so this gives it a little bit more difficulty and a little bit more ability to change its speed, which makes things harder to hit. Sure. It'll be a terror at low levels, but so be it. Sombra. Machine spread pistol reduced by 20%. Sombra players have been begging for that forever. Shots per second increased from 20 to 24. Okay, so she's going to have some damage. Cooldowns, hack. Cooldown when interrupted from 2 to 3 seconds. So longer lockout on her hack when it gets interrupted. Hack duration reduced from 5 to 3.5 seconds. In exchange for more damage, okay. Stealth now is an 8-second maximum duration. We're back to this. No longer plays an audio cue if the ability reaches its full duration. What? Why did we do this to Stealth? Like, I'm okay with Stealth having a duration again. That's okay with me, but you've got to give it something in exchange for that duration. You have to make it activate faster. You have to make it activate instantly. You can't just be like, oh, no audio cue for when its duration ends. Like, that's not... Or you have to go, she can hack while stealth. Or you have to give her something. You can't just go, stealth now has an 8-second maximum duration. Okay, like, yes, that gives you a little bit more ability to sneak past enemy lines and get set up behind them on a flank, that sort of thing, which is still cool. Yes, it significantly takes away some of her team play ability to consistently give you perfect scouting information, that sort of thing. Yes, we've increased her damage significantly by making shots per second increase and by reducing her weapon spread. I kind of thought our trade for this was our hack duration. This feels like too much. I don't actually think we're being fair to Sombra here. I know. No one worries about being fair to Sombra, but I don't actually think we're being fair to Sombra here. Okay. Junkrat is known for his talents at being quiet and stealthy. Jake shows up at your room at 4 a.m. Okay. Bad Butler says, I didn't play the last two experimentals either, but weren't the last two about DPS getting to be broken, which is already the experience for most people on ladder? I don't know that DPS being broken is the experience for most people on ladder. Do people feel that way? Like, I feel like the roles are reasonably well balanced. At the top, people know the wonders that is the main tank. At the top, people know the wonders that is Zenyatta, the wonders that is Tracer. But for most of the ladder, I think they're reasonably balanced as a role, as roles. Bastion. Character size reduced by 15%. Mini Bastion. Okay. Configuration recon, ammo increase. Sombra will be fine, by the way, with these. Like, she'll do more damage. Hack still works. I think this is a silly change. I think you could have put it on like a 12-second or a 20-second, maybe. 8-second is kind of short considering what she had before. If she can't do anything specific, like hack throwing it or something like that, like she couldn't too, but hey, whatever. She's not going to die from it. Bastion, character size reduced by 15%. Configuration recon, ammo increased from 35 to 100. Weapon spread reduced by 20%. Third bullet. What's his mystery ability? What ability did they leave in the game for us to figure out about configuration recon? What change are they not telling us? And then self-repair can now be channeled while self-repair can be channeled while firing? And he's got 100 ammo and 20% reduced weapon spread? Oh, they were serious. Okay. Huh. That's a hero. That's just silly. That's stupid. Obviously, he'd be a terror. Everything is broken, so I guess it's okay, but like, he's got a smaller hitbox. I assume this applies to both modes. He can self-repair while firing. I assume that applies to both modes. He will be much less vulnerable in recon mode if he has a smaller hitbox, 100 ammo, and 20% reduced fire spread. In turret mode, he didn't get a weapon spread reduction, but you should still be able to recover while firing, which is still, and have a size reduction, which is pretty meaningful buff. Don't worry, your Zarya will face tank the Bastion. Right? He doesn't have turret mode anymore. It's not in the notes. Oh! That's what didn't make it into the notes. That's what our missing bullet is. Okay, if he really doesn't have turret mode anymore, poor Bastion. This is not enough of a buff to make up for him not having turret mode anymore. Like, don't get me wrong, he's a bulky DPS in terms of he's 15% smaller, which helps his bulk. He can repair while firing, which helps his bulk. He has 20% reduced spread, has more ammo. Like, that'll make him a pretty good duelist, but it still makes him a pretty one-dimensional duelist. And you're still going to be able to go, hey, Widow headshot him. Hey, things like that. So, he'll be okay at situations like, you know, a Tracer's never taking him down, that sort of thing. He'll be pretty good at dueling dive DPS, but he'll still get crushed by good poke. He's a slightly different soldier. More than slightly different. I mean, I think him being able to repair while firing, as his repair is stronger than soldiers' healing station heal. Yeah. Hanzo, Dragon Strike. The dragons now spawn immediately if the arrow impacts terrain. Okay. I'm fine with that. That was always like one of the tricks for getting your dragon strikes off against D.Va when she was at her strongest with DMs and such. Storm Arrow. No longer fires the next 5 arrows instantly. Now grants 6-second buff with the following effect. Lunge cooldown reduced from 4 second to 1 second. Please don't. Storm bow movement penalty removed. Storm bow draw time decreased from 0.75 to 0.45 seconds. So instead of specifically being you get X charges of arrows, it's you get 6 seconds of a faster fire rate and a 1 second lunge cooldown. And your movement penalty reduced for when your bow has arrows drawn. fine. I don't have an issue with changing it to work like that. I think this particular part of it is stupid. The reducing the lunge cooldown is stupid, but I don't have an issue with changing Storm Arrow to instead give him a duration of things working differently instead of this weird, like, duration timer plus charge mix that he has right now. So that conceptually doesn't bother me. I think that's probably better to have it just be a timer rather than this timer plus charges hybrid. You would play with the numbers, but 1 second lunge cooldown is stupid. 1 second lunge cooldown is just, oh, a Winston jumps on me? Well, hop, hop, hop. What? What? Okay. Though maybe he needs it now. Maybe he needs it because a Genji dashes on him and he needs to be able to go hop, hop so that the Genji can dash a second time on him. Soldier can peel better for his core like Zen Brig comps with heal pad. Also, Soldier can flank. Not sure how Bastion can flank. Well, Bastion will be able to flank a little bit better. I mean, he doesn't have the movement speed that Soldier does, but even having some self-sustain can help someone exist. You know, it's sort of the Sigma. Like, Sigma doesn't have a movement ability to go flank, to go take an off angle, but Sigma does have recovery between his barrier health, his shield health, that sort of thing. And those are some of the things that make him good at off angling. He can hold those angles because he has recovery. Bastion does have recovery. And it's not like Bastion doesn't flank now without movement speed. Okay. So, Storm Arrow, conceptually cool. The specific lunge thing is stupid. Hanzo shouldn't even have lunge, but whatever. Torb, Rivet Gun deals damage with primary fire. Dealing damage with primary fire adds a stacking buff that increases its damage by 5. Okay. Each buff lasts for 5 seconds. How about just expose armor in general? Like, since that's clearly what you're trying to do, just make them take 5 from every extra for every source of damage. But maybe that would be too powerful. I guess what they're saying here is they want people to actually hit shots with it rather than just sort of get lucky spam, which, fine. I don't have an issue with it. This is, you know, this matters, but it's not huge, I'll say. It's not like it took a lot of shots to take someone down with his primary fire anyway. Okay, Ashe, the Viper, no longer reloads ammo individually, now reloads all ammo in 2.25 seconds. That's still a pretty long reload. Coach weapon, cooldown increased from 10 to 13 seconds. Dynamite no longer deals self-damage. Explosion no longer has fall-off damage. Let's look at that. If I thought about that in the current game, not in this messy game, she gets a long reload. That is a long reload. She gets a cooldown increase. She doesn't hurt herself with dynamite, but dynamite no longer has fall-off damage. Or has damage, no longer has damage fall-off. Yeah, that's probably a net nerf as far as I'm concerned. Like, don't get me wrong, there's going to be you're going to get some more TNT damage, and that's going to be cool. But not being able to reload individually and interrupt your reloads, and instead, you know, would be fine if you had like a 1.5 second reload. But a 2.25 second reload, that's expensive to not be able to go, oh, well, I can just interrupt my 4 second reload whenever I want and still have gotten some of my bullets back, whatever. Like, that's not good. And then a cooldown increase on her coach gun. Like, Ashe's net better because the hit scan nerf reversion is in this patch, but just looking at her specific portions of the patch notes, I don't particularly like it. Those Ashe reloads would drive temporal crazy on VOD's review? Exactly. Downtown on the Viper is too long. Agreed. You can't have a 2.25 second reload that you can't interrupt on a damage hero. Doesn't work for me. Hey, Adam. Coach, I hate to tell you, but you're bald. Strategic coach. Hope you're doing well, Adam. Hope you're doing well. Strategic coach. I mean, yeah. Strategic coach is a position that I've held. What's your point? Okay. It's not the position I currently hold, but it is the position I've held in the past. Okay, so here we go. Let's look on to Cassidy. Health reduced from 225 to 200. I know many people will cheer over that. Peacekeeper. This mystery bullet. Mystery bullet. Is this going to be something like Bastion where he lost his ability to transform? What's our secret Cassidy buffer nerf? Weapon recovery reduced from 0.5 to 0.42 seconds. Secondary fire removed. So he's a left click bot. Okay. I really don't like playing with rates of fire like this because it betrays sort of muscle memory that people have trained over 6 years now, but okay. Combat rule cooldown increased from 6 to 8 seconds, can no longer be used in the air. Fine. Deadeye, reduced visual effects around Cassidy while active. Reduced visual effects around Cassidy while active. Sure. Why not? So you want to call less attention to him, but like that doesn't really matter. So we got a health pool reduce. He got his secondary fire removed. They're basically experimenting with how can they make this a good hero without flashbang. They didn't actually take away flashbang in this patch unless they did, and it's not listed here. And their current experimentation with that is, hey, can we make his left click better? And they want to do that with a fire rate decrease. Fine. I can live with that. Again, Cassidy becomes obviously worse in this patch, but still probably nets out better because of the hit scan nerf reversion. But ultimately, this is not terribly good for him. Perfect Deadeye change would be create a wall of tumbleweeds that hide Cassidy's position. Plot says Ashe's damage needs to go up a lot or Kree's down a lot. I mean, they both get a damage buff in this one. She gets a bit of a nerf in, having to deal with that reload, I'd argue. And he gets a bit of a buff in terms of the fire rate there. Obviously, there's bigger pieces of their kit. She loses time on this. He loses time on this. He loses health. I'd say he got the bigger hit to him than she did, but they both got the hit scan reversion nerf and are fine with it. Reaper. Shadow Step cooldown decreased from 10 to 15. Can now be used during Wraith form. Okay, so Shadow Step can be used during Wraith form, and our cooldown has been decreased significantly, cut in half. Wraith form cooldown reduced from 8 to 4 Excuse me. No longer reloads your weapon. No longer applies a movement speed buff. But you have a 5-second cooldown on Shadow Step, so who cares? Because you can be a more. Now that's a scary Reaper. That is a scary Reaper. You can Wraith. You can Shadow Step during your Wraith. Your Wraith, I don't care that it doesn't reload your weapon. It frequently got used just to dodge abilities, things like that, to reposition, that sort of thing. Yes, you can't reposition with it nearly as well for short repositions, for sticking to enemies that are trying to run away, for example, but you can teleport during it now, protect your Shadow Step. Yeah, Reaper's getting some good stuff out of this, especially if you go, hey, look at all the speed buffs that are now in the game, with the Zarya bubble, with the Orisa fortify. This would be a good patch for Reaper. Could be scary. Soldier, tactical visor, reduced visual effects around 76 while active. Okay. Helix rockets no longer deal self-damage, so no rocket jumping. That's a nerf. Cooldown increased from 6 to 8 seconds. What? Are we kidding? This is reduced visual effects around Soldier 76 while active. And then Helix Rocket for attack visor, and then Helix Rocket no longer deals self-damage and had its cooldown increased. Like, okay, so we did the global hit scan. We did the global hit scan buff with the fall-off damage change in this patch, so we do need to nerf Soldier, because Soldier got buffed enough through that when that nerf actually came in the live patches. He got buffed through that with the damage increase. So now they feel like they have to nerf him, and this is the nerf that they hit him with. No rocket jumping, which is just going to feel terrible, and cooldown of the rocket increased by 2 seconds. I mean, considering we also nerfed the other hit scan, that's honestly probably enough. Not enough, rather. This is probably not enough. I don't really like this. Probably wanted to hit him a little bit harder than this. Though this is going to feel so bad not being able to rocket jump. Maybe that's enough. Maybe taking away the rocket jumps is enough. Ugh. Ugh. Bad changes. I haven't really liked any of these hit scan changes, to be honest. Any of the things that they're playing with here. I am in favor of reverting the hit scan nerf, and I'm in favor of giving most of them some slight nerfs to compensate for reverting it. But I don't think we've found them here. So they get 50% half marks for this one. How does he still have super jump? You don't get to rocket jump without taking damage. That's how it works. Are they letting him still rocket jump even though he's not taking damage with it? Like, that's not how... Okay. If they're doing it, it's not nearly as big of a nerf. You still have the cooldown decrease, which is a nerf, but yeah. And it's definitely not enough. If he can still rocket jump, it's definitely not enough considering he got damage buffs when that nerf came in. These two didn't. These two fell behind quite a bit. And now these two are getting what I'm going to call net nerfs while getting the hit scan reversion, which is, of course, net overall a buff to all three of these, but he's getting the smallest nerfs to go with it. The jump seems higher too? Okay, so they let him jump, they did it, they changed it to be like a fair concussion blast to himself type thing, where even though he doesn't hurt himself, he still moves from it. Okay, couldn't have known that from the patch notes. Then yeah, he's still going to be happier than those other two hit scan. Excuse me. Grappling hook for Widowmaker. Cooldown increased from 12 to 15. Can now place up to 3, so that's fine. Cooldown increased from 12 to 15. Why? The hit scan fall-off changes don't really impact her that meaningfully. You don't need to give her a nerf to hurt that, so that's a pretty big nerf, a 3-second climb on Grappling Claw from a hero that's already vulnerable to dive heroes because of her low health. Venom Mine can now place up to 3 active mines. Cooldown reduced from 15 to 10 seconds. Damage reduced from 15 to 10 per second. Effect duration reduced from 5 to 3 seconds. Projectile speed increased from 20 to 3 from 20 to 30. So the idea is that like she can throw mines all over the place and cover all the routes, and she'll know when someone's coming. But that doesn't really help if her getaway tool is on such a long cooldown. Like, yes, I know that they're coming. Okay, but the duration of giving you walls on them is only 3 seconds now. And you have a 15-second cooldown on your reposition. Like, I get that they're trying to go, hey, you have 3 mines, so you should have less reposition, but 3 seconds is a big nerf to a hero that already has viability issues. I'm not a fan. If you like, you can experiment with giving her 3 mines, but this is too much. You could probably experiment with giving her 3 mines and not touch her grappling hook cooldown, and it would be fine. Let's be honest, mine is not a place where widows tend to get a ton of value out of the hero, and it probably should have a little bit more to it. If you later went, hey, let's increase this by 1 or 2 seconds, maybe, but the 3 seconds is too much for what this is. Grappling hook is that much better than Venom Mine as an ability. Tracer. Ultimate cost reduced by 50%. Explosion damage. Explosion damage reduced from 350 to 190. No longer deals self-damage. So we don't like self-damage, apparently. Apparently, we really don't like self-damage. Ultimate cost cut in half. Explosion reduced from 350 to 190. But she still gets the 5 damage for the sticky, so it's not quite a one-shot on 200 HP heroes. They really want her trying to stick squishies. No, explosion damage. Explosion damage. We mean it's damage, right? We don't mean the first fall-off increment. I think we mean it's damage. So we really want her sticking squishies, and it won't even one-shot the squishies. Even with the 5 plus 190 there, it won't one-shot squishies. So she's going to have to do any extra damage. Just let it be 200 damage, guys. Like, you can go, hey, I want this to be less effective against tanks. Oh, but you're cutting its ult reduction. It's not even an ult at that point. Like, you're gonna have pulse bombs faster than you're going to have your Valkyrie cooldown back, since Valkyrie is now going to be a cooldown rather than an ultimate. Like, I don't mind reducing its ult charge and making it no, you're only going after squishies with this and it's a precision tool. I think that's fun. I think people could like that. But we probably went too hard on both. Reduce its ult charge requirement by 35% or something, and then just let it be 200 damage. Don't do this 190 nonsense, because then Tracer has to go like, I stick you, I damage you to get, which gets your attention, and then try to stick you, which is, like, that's not a good way to play her. Or I try to stick you, and I need to stay in for an instant to do extra damage and recall out. Plus, you have to deal with, oh, they're getting any degree of healing, and that interrupts it. Just let it do 200 damage. And, oh, well, it no longer deals self-damage, so you can stay in while you're trying to eliminate them. No, you can't. There's other concerns with staying in, as they're supposed to be. I'd have preferred numbers that look more like these as opposed to these for what we're doing here. You can 100% tell which characters they liked to play with this patch. Yeah. Imagine if Widowmines highlighted enemies for the whole team. There's something you could do instead. If you want to put a little more power in Venom Mine, you could do that. Not that I necessarily mind having multiple mines active. They're experimenting a lot in this patch with giving multiple charges. She's got 3 mine charges. Pharah has 2 concussion blast charges. Genji has 2 dash charges. They're experimenting with their charges right now. This patch is about extremes. It's true. Okay, so that's our DPS. In our DPS, the DPS that look interesting to me, I mean, this is interesting. I'll certainly be curious in how this plays. I think it's going to be broken. This isn't as bad as I thought, so I can live with this. This makes him more annoying. People aren't going to like it, whatever. This is just a nothing burger. This is interesting. Obviously, it's too powerful, but hey, I actually sort of like that they're giving some of the flex DPS heroes some love, and you can see that they're giving some of the flex DPS heroes some love because the hit scan have mostly been better for a while. So Pharah's got a pretty nice one here. I just don't particularly like these changes. There's no reason for Junkrat not to have footsteps. This change is fine. Don't do this. You can weaken stealth, but don't weaken it like this. You might even have to weaken stealth because this is enough of a buff and this isn't enough of a nerf that you might have to weaken stealth, but like weaken it to 12 seconds, not 8. Adam in Charge with a super chat for 199 says, hey guys, Legit RC has a talking dog on his stream. Cool. I thank you for that super chat, Adam in Charge, for 199, and for the information that apparently Legit RC has a talking dog on his stream. I don't believe you, and I don't think this chat believes you either, but I appreciate that nonetheless. Okay, so looking at this one, yeah, that happened. Bastion broken if he doesn't have turret form. This portion of it is silly, but I like the direction that they're trying here. This doesn't do anything. If you want to give him exposed armor, give him exposed armor. He doesn't need a stacking damage debuff, a damage buff on his left clicks because, like, people go down to a couple left clicks anyways. I think they didn't get the balance right between their 3 hit scan here. They needed to nerf Soldier harder to establish a balance that we're actually looking for with these 3 heroes. This is going to be solid. Yeah, so we're seeing, and then Tracer is Tracer. This is bad. I think they made Flex DPS look better than hit scan in this patch, which is interesting. Obviously, I don't think that fully actually happens because they reverted the hit scan nerf, so I think they're seeing, does this give us parity? And I like that. I like that they're trying to see, does this give us parity, because the hit scan have mostly been stronger than the Flex DPS for a bit now, so they're hitting them with some nerfs while doing some interesting things too. The flex DPS, Genji Pharah specifically, Echo could be dangerous. I don't think she's going to be too dangerous like this. This could get really annoying. It's a little bit of a knife's edge, but I think it's okay. Tanks are, just half of them don't work. Reaper solid, and then Tracer. Yeah, Tracer's Tracer. Pulse Bomb is a cooldown. Like, Pulse Bomb was always a cooldown, but Pulse Bomb is full on a cooldown if you do that. You're just not going to bother ult tracking that. Okay. Okay, so now we're on to our supports, and this is where we got our thumbnail from, because I saw the Mercy one. I obviously hadn't seen any of these others as we got into it here. Okay. Ouch, Congex, ouch. Wait till I see Symmetra, uh-oh. I mean, I remember she was on the movement speed list, and her being on the movement speed list scares me with how her weapon currently ramps, but we'll see. So, Ana. Biotic Rifle. Reload time decreased from 1.5 to 0.75 seconds. That is a pretty big change. Sleep Dart. Targets now appear in the kill feed. Okay. It won't help your allies be any more aware of them. Allies now see an icon above slept enemy. That might help. Turrets can now be slept. I mean, I guess if you can sleep D.Va's mech, why not? Sleep Dart can now stop D.Va's mech from flying during self-destruct. I guess that's bothered ML7 a lot. I guess ML7 has been like, what? Cassidy can flashbang a self-destruct and it stops? I want to be able to do that with sleep. I guess that really bothered him and he got that in here. This was ML7, right? I think so. Yeah, ML7 support heroes. Okay. Nano boost. Now instead of granting increased healing received to the target... What? Now, instead of granting increased healing received to the target, it now causes the target to also heal for 50% more? Huh? Casting time reduced from 0.15 to 0.5 seconds. Final blows dealt by allies affected by Nano Boost now decrease Ana's current cooldowns by 1 second. Okay, that's a little cool. That's a little bit cool. Where, hey, like Hammond could get the cooldown reductions with his pile drive, Ana can get the cooldown reductions by final blows from the people that she nanoed. Casting time is, faster. We like this. It was always just the weirdest thing where you nano a target and the target dies, because using nano to save someone is an appropriate use of nano, and trying to do that and your nano just fizzling out in midair and you not having it and them not getting nanoed was a silly interaction. Kind of like Hammond getting bashed out of Adaptive Shield was always a silly interaction. Like, this isn't some skillful, you outplayed the Hammond, you read his timing. That's just luck. And this is much the same thing. So I think trying to get rid of that, I think having it be instant would be fine. I don't think it needs an apply time. I think it can be hit scan, but you know what? This is better. Causes the target to also heal for 50% more. So little cooler if you nano your support partner to protect them from a dive, that sort of thing. So it makes nano a little more flexible. Bigger deal out of sleep being more obvious to your allies, but really this is a, hey, reload time decreased. Which, sort of lets her do more with her rifle. I mean, the biggest buff here really is this one right here of she's going to have bigger uptime. She's going to have more uptime. She's going to do more to go, no, I'm not going to let my tank fall. Or, hey, I can afford to take shots, offensive shots. I can do, more of these offensive shots, whatever. And, I can even shoot at a barrier and it's fine. She's one of the heroes who generally just refuses to shoot at barriers because, hey, her reload is relatively expensive compared to the damage her reload, her rate of fire, etc. This may push her to the other side of that. I'd have to think about that one a little bit more, but that's a pretty meaningful buff right there. It's not in the level of some of the silliness we see of Genji getting 2 dashes or Pharah, knocking people back twice as far, that sort of thing, but it's somewhat meaningful. Hey... And then getting the cooldowns back faster is pretty cool too. Baptiste, exit boost jump height increased by 50%. Why? There really aren't that many things that he was struggling to reach. Time to fully charge increased from 1 to 2 seconds. But you'll never need to fully charge because he jumps 50% higher. Mortality field, duration decreased from 5 to 1.5 seconds. Cooldown decreased from 25 to 23 seconds. Now prevents allies from dropping below 20% of their maximum health up from 10. Okay, people are going to feel like that's more skillful. You have to get the application right. I can see that this was designed by someone who's I can see where this is coming from, and this is definitely a finer touch that we're looking at for our support changes, or some of our support changes, than we have for some of our DPS changes, for example. Now prevents allies from dropping 20% instead of 10. Amp Matrix, Baptiste can now deal self-healing with the Biotic Launcher while the ultimate is active. Sure, that's fine. Duration lowered from 10 to 8 seconds. Doesn't matter. It's like the first 4 seconds that are relevant. It's really like the first 2 seconds that are relevant. So we made Immortality Field more precise in exchange for a small, very small cooldown decrease and a tiny bit more health that they get locked at. It's tough to call whether the lamp stuff there is a net nerf or a net buff. It's going to frustrate people a little less because it doesn't last as long, even when people aren't shooting at it. It's probably a little bit of a net nerf, but it's a very minor net nerf, truth be told. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably how I'd view that. The exo boot changes just don't matter. It's a buff to exo boots, but exo boots aren't that powerful of an ability, and it's not going to open up a ton more for him or anything. And then Amp Matrix getting a little self-heal. Fine, he doesn't need the buff, but Anna got buffed, so I guess that's okay. Like, Anna got a reload decrease, cooldown decreases while nano was going on, losing less nanos. Maybe people aren't going to mess up her sleep as much. 1 second. Sorry about that. It's a nerf, yeah. Okay. Fine. Semitic says, it just feels like if a mortality field is only 1.5 seconds, you just focus the target that is low to maintain kill range rather than needing to turn to it. I mean, depends on your weapon speed. Ultimately, it is better to flip off and flip back, but, you know, to flip over to the lamp and flip back, but it depends on your rate of fire, for example. Yeah, I'd say slight net nerf to it. I don't think it's a massive nerf to it, to be honest, because the truth is those lamps do not last long in most situations. Sometimes they're around a corner, there's nothing you can do, but most of the times lamps don't last very long. It's now easier to dive Baptiste. Yeah, I suppose, except that, you know, he's got that amp matrix that he can heal himself during, which is very similar to something that I recommended as again, my dream would be, hey, let's nerf regenerative burst, or maybe even take away regenerative burst and then give him small compensation, and like when he drops amp matrix, he gets healed back to full or something like that. And this is very similar to that, where he can heal himself while amp matrix is down. But they didn't take away what I wanted. They didn't really take much away at all here. They decreased his lamp's duration, and in exchange gave him a lower cooldown and a higher threshold on it locking their health at, which, hey, not a big deal. Overall, we're looking at a buff for Bap here. We're also looking at a buff for Anna, but I don't think either of them are looking at a huge net buff out of this. Brig. Inspire healing effect expires immediately if Brigitte dies. Inspire. Healing effect expires immediately if Brigitte dies. Okay, so a nerf there. Shield Bash, distance covered increased by 15%. Now retains more velocity when colliding with terrain. We want back into our Shield Bash jump text, do we? Okay. Whip Shot, while Rally is active, Whip Shot functionally changes to the following. Uh-oh. Damage and knockback all enemies within a 7-meter radius. Whip Shot functionally changes to the following. Damage and knockback all enemies within a 7-meter radius. Restricts Brig's movement for 0.75 seconds. Increases the cooldown by remaining duration of rally. Increases the cooldown by the remaining duration of rally plus 4 seconds. So for one time during rally, she gets to do like a spin her whip around type thing and knock everyone back within a 7-meter radius. But it locks her down for 3/4 of a second to do so, and she won't get any more whip shots during the rally. What? Why? That's an unnecessary change. That's an unnecessary change and just sort of silly. It's them experimenting. I suspect that this was Blizzard, not ML7, and this was probably in the realm of them experimenting with, well, this is a talent that we want to give her. This is something else that we want to try. We want to try something very different with her in preps for Overwatch 2. No, the rally didn't get a buff. Yeah. Why is Brig rallying on the front line? I mean, she can rally on the front line. Rallying Brig is pretty darn bulky. She has Inspire going. She has Rally going. She can still be the raid boss when she has Rally going. This looks like silly ML7 do something crazier. Could be. Oh no, this looks like silly ML7 do something crazier. Yeah. No, I agree. This was probably Blizzard. This was probably Blizzard that came in here and did this. Why would you knock people back during Rally? Unless you got in way over your head, but if you got in way over your head, you don't want to root yourself for 3/4 of a second. That's not something you want to do, so it doesn't really make sense. And then your whip shot is just locked out for the remaining duration of rally. No, thank you. Sonic Amplifier, wall riding damage increased. While wall riding, damage increased from 20 to 25. Fine. Not even bothered. Sound barrier enemies that are in the area of effect are now knocked back 6 meters. This is probably too much, because he fires, that's each individual pellet that is having its damage increased by 25% there, going from 20 to 25. So that's a pretty big increase, and it makes his ability to dive someone pretty darn good. I suppose he's come off the wall when he fires some of those shots while diving people. This is still probably too much of an increase, but I conceptually have no problem with this. And I do prefer the while wall riding small damage increase to while wall riding rate of fire increase. So I'm good with that. I am perfectly good with that. Makes sense to me. I would just have that number be smaller, and then enemies that are in the area are now knocked back 6 meters during sound barrier. It doesn't matter. Like, we're not using sound barrier to get environmental kills, I hope. We might be using it to protect Lucio to go get environmental kills, but like, yeah, that's a kind of meaningless buff. This is too much, but the reality is, I say this is too much in a world where I'm trying to compare Lucio to the current support cast. If we're comparing Lucio to the buffed support cast, this is just fine. The buff support cast meaning what these guys net got here. But on a live patch, I would want like a 2 damage increase per pellet while wall riding. Maybe a 3 damage increase. Yeah, damage boost while wall riding is fine with me. Okay, Mercy. Mercy is the big one for changes. Valkyrie is no longer an ultimate ability. It is now ability 2. Healing increased from 55 to 70 per second. While in Valkyrie, fine. KD Staff Beam no longer attaches to additional targets, so Valkyrie is much weaker. Duration reduced from 15 to 3 seconds. Yeah, so it's only 3 seconds. Cooldown is now 20 seconds. A 3-second duration ability with a 20-second cooldown. I don't want it. Flying movement speed decreased from 7 to 6. Guardian Angel movement speed reduced from 25 to 20. So, like, what you're looking at is you can use an ability to increase her heal steroid to get 15 more health per second. That's really what we're doing. We're going, hey, if you use Valkyrie, you get your standard movement freedom from Valkyrie for 3 seconds. You get a 15 health per second damage steroid for 3 seconds. I don't know what her base numbers are on Guardian Angel movement speed and flying movement speed, but you're going to get better movement to maybe get yourself out of a sticky situation, and you're going to get a 15 health per second steroid. Mercy does not need a lot of help getting out of sticky situations. Guardian Angel is already very good for that. A 20-second cooldown for a 15 health per second steroid that lasts for 3 seconds isn't very good. This isn't good. Obviously, she gets Valkyrie, and Valkyrie has things to it. Hey, I suppose you have infinite ammo in your blaster for those 3 seconds. You have... Oh, no, did we revert that one? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. You have your movement. It's a little slower than it was before in Valk, but you have your movement. You have, I believe you still have a Guardian Angel movement speed boost as well there, but, like, that's not really what you need. You activate Valk for the chaining effect, not for the extra survivability you get 9 times out of 10. Could you go, oh, well, I'm going to Valk to protect my res? Well, that brings us to Resurrect. But so far, Valkyrie does not look like a very good ability. So Resurrect is now an ultimate ability, can resurrect up to 5 people at once. Maximum range increased from 5 to 8 meters. Does it work on Bob? Because Bob is treated as a player for, like, objective contesting and things like that, and we specifically said can resurrect up to 5 players at once, not resurrects everyone within range of stuff. So does it resurrect Bob? But here's the thing. I need to know how it works. I need to know how Valkyrie works in terms of, does Valkyrie lock you out of healing for an instant, like activating Valkyrie would put your staff down for an instant, like rezzing someone would put your staff down for an instant, even when you had mass res originally? And is this like original mass res where you get iframes? Yeah. It better work on Bob? It doesn't feel a lot faster during Valk? Okay, so good to know. Good to know. I like the idea of swapping ult with res, but this isn't right, Chief. Yeah, this is not a good Valk. This Valk doesn't work. 3-second steroid that's a little bit of, some movement when she doesn't really need movement. And, it'll also activate, I suppose, her normal Valkyrie again. But the reality is you're probably using it under pressure, which means you're probably not getting Valk's personal healing during it. And then a 15 health per second steroid. I need to know if the Valk, like, completely doesn't interrupt what you're doing with your staff, or if it interrupts it slightly. If it interrupts it at all, that 15 health per second increase is going to be completely meaningless. And, like, hey, this is just a really not good ability. And then in Resurrect, again, I need to see the animations. Are we back to our old animation where you get iframes, where you put down your staff for a moment, that sort of thing? Or is this, hey, you do it and, you're vulnerable like you are with current res? I suspect we've just got old mass res back, and it's not very good. Hide and Seek Mercy isn't actually good. In modern Overwatch, where people do map control, people take flanks, it's going to be much, much worse than it was 5 years ago. And I think people are going to be surprised. I think you're going to have some Mercy mains who have been crying, we need mass res, we need mass res. Res is what we want. Mass res is the ability. It was the stupid change to get rid of mass res in exchange for Valkyrie. I think the people who go try her now are not going to be happy that they get, that their team gets crushed, and then maybe their team gets mass res, but their team gets mass resed, like, their team has to die stuck close enough together for them to get mass res. They have to not be found before the fight starts in a game where people do a much better job of taking off angles and pathing now, and then the other team goes, oh, you got mass resed? That's cool, but we have angles on you, and it's really easy for us to wipe you out again. Like, mass res is not a very good ability, and this is a net mercy nerf. I'm pretty darn confident that this is a net mercy nerf. That said, If you made the ult charge requirement for mass res super low or something, I could, of course, be proven wrong. If you gave people stupid amounts of iframes after they're resed, I could be proven wrong. If you make it, again, a low enough ult charge that it's very easy for her to go, hey, I hit a res every 20 seconds, for example, and I'm using it for tempo reses, totally fine. If you make the range on it that, hey, she covers, you know, the entire, like, half of a map with her res, so it really doesn't matter how close her allies' souls are together, it could be a little bit better. But this looks like a Mercy nerf, to me. And Mercy nerf doesn't make any sense when we did Ana and Bap buffs, and when she's already a hero that, as I just did, a video on why can't Mercy be meta, this doesn't fix any of her problems. This does not give her a spot in the design space to be successful. So now we're on to Moira. New passive. Quick melee now slows enemies by 30% for 1 second. Moira shouldn't be in melee range. This effect has a 10-second cooldown per enemy. I mean, it'll help her with the flankers, and I suppose that's what they're looking for, but, like, even they are rarely actually in melee range here. No. 10-second cooldown per enemy, slows enemies by 30%. That's a pretty meaningful slow for 1 second. Primary fire, maximum resource increase by 12.5%, so it restores resources faster. Batic Orb no longer changes speed when near valid targets. Orbs now move at a consistent 5.5 meters per second. After activating the ability, holding primary or secondary fire for 1 second will cause you to fire. After activating the ability, holding primary or secondary fire for 1 second will cause you to fire faster orb that moves at a constant 20 meters per second. Okay. I get that it feels a little weird that Moira's orbs don't always do exactly what people expect, but that's just kind of a skill. You sort of get used to it. I don't think the answer is let's give you 2 different ways to change the speed, especially when one is going to have to cause you to, like, delay the use of the orb for a second. I don't think that's the right input schema for that. Coalescence, channeling on an enemy target continuously for 2 seconds will now also lift them off the ground for 3 seconds. This effect can only happen once per enemy. Oh, okay, so it becomes easier to finish them off, because if they're lifted off the ground, they'll lose movement control. Fine with me. It says if you get 2 seconds on someone, they are yours. That's a pretty big buff, actually, because while 2 seconds isn't quite enough to heal people, or to take out most of your targets with the damage per second that she does with it, it's close, and this will lock in a lot more. This will lock in eliminations. This will cause people to go, hey, I thought I could get you before, now I for sure get you. That'll convert to quite a few extra eliminations. Yeah, that's a pretty big buff considering that's a real piece of her kit. Okay. I'm okay with it. It's probably a similar level buff to what Bap and Ana got overall. Makes sense to me. Zenyatta, new passive elevation. Zenyatta can jump higher if he holds the jump button. Can he, like, jump higher and just keep going up and float and float and float? Orb of Destruction, ammo increased from 20 to 25. I don't think Zen needs buffs. Orb of Harmony, grant an additional role-specific effect if attached to the ally for at least 2 seconds. This is more where we needed to go with Moira, not Zen, but okay. Tanks get 20% damage reduction. Damage, get 10% movement speed increase. Support, healing received increased from 30 to 40 health per second. Okay. Those are pretty cool. They don't work with the tanks as the tanks have been redesigned, but this was probably designed in a vacuum without looking at the tank changes. They don't work at the tanks on the tanks as they've been redesigned because you wouldn't want to attack the tanks as they've been redesigned. Giving the tanks 20% damage reduction is just like, I was already not going to try to eliminate Reinhardt. Like, I was already not going to try to eliminate Orisa. Like, yeah. The Zenyatta stuff is cool taken in a vacuum. I'm good with it. And then Orb of Discord, damage amplification reduced from 25 to 20%. And that's fine with me because you made Orb of Harmony a lot cooler. Yeah. Again, yeah, that's solid. I'm good with these in a vacuum. They don't make sense in the totality of this patch. But if you were like, this is what we're doing to the current game's end, I'd probably go, okay. Truth be told, it's probably... Tough to call whether that would be a net nerf or a net buff in the game right now. Probably a slight net buff. It's a big deal to lose 5% more damage on that Orb of Discord. Like a big deal. But getting that if your Orb of Harmony is on someone for at least 2 seconds, they get these additional effects. Those are really cool. And then he also got some ammo increase, which certainly doesn't hurt. The problem with these changes is they're difficult to control versus treatment because they all happen simultaneously. Exactly the problem. 100% the problem. We would much prefer that they be like, hey, let's do weird changes to 3 or 4 heroes, not the entire cast. But that's not what they're doing right now. And then we'll probably get one of these changes for real at the end of this, and we'll go, what? You actually thought it was a good idea to make tanks do 50% less damage? Or what? You actually thought it was a good idea to give Genji double dash at 30 damage? Symmetra, moved from damage to support role. Oh, right, we hadn't seen her yet. Okay. Now sees ally health bars by default like other support heroes, but everyone can enable that. Photon projector, primary fire, damage per second decreased from 6120 180 to 4080 120. Okay. Secondary fire damage reduced from 120 to 80. Secondary fire deals up to 50% increased damage to non-heroes like turrets and barriers. Her secondary fire, so we're orbs. Okay. Ammo increased from 70 to 80. Fine. So she's quite a bit weaker on her weapon so far. Sentry turret health increased from 30 to 50. Why though? Why? No one likes that. No longer deals damage. Okay. Now heals allies. I see. Heals 20 health per second per turret. Maximum range increased from 10 to 12. Building time reduced from 0.75 to 0.5. Cooldown reduced from 10 to 8 seconds. No longer slows target movement. No. So she doesn't have a direct healing option. Her only direct healing option is to drop turrets. Her turrets did have their cooldown reduced by 2 seconds, and she can still stack 3 of them. But, like, once your turrets get wiped out, like a well-placed fire strike, for example, if you were trying to, you know, drop 3 turrets to heal a tank, you know, as a thing, she's still going to be very much on the back foot with no way to direct heal. No. Yeah, that's not going to work. And it's not going to be like, oh, well, I can set them up on point on like a night market on Lijiang Tower and they'll be good and they'll help us really bunker on the point, or not bunker on the point, but turtle on the point, because like they're not going to last as long because the opponents aren't going to be as afraid to push in. Like, again, what you're talking about is they'll be smarter, they'll be faster to readjust than Mercy players are, for example, with beams, just because they're AI driven. They will be faster if things are within their range that are missing any health, but they won't smart target, probably. The max that you're getting is 60 health per second out of having 3 of them on the same target, and that's not a huge amount of healing. They can't, you know, flip over to a damage beam. This isn't adequate for the support category. But let's see what else we do. Teleporter. Cooldown increased from 10 to 12. Allies that take the teleporter receive a 40% movement speed increase for 2 seconds. The effect has a 10-second cooldown per ally. Okay, that's pretty good. Photon barrier, health reduced from 4,000 to 2,500, duration reduced from 12 to 10 seconds, ultimate cost reduced by 9%. Okay, so she's definitely not a big healer support. She becomes more of a utility support. She's kind of got anti-synergy, in that her turrets would sort of like you to be in a place to do their work, but the TP would like you to chase down the enemy team. You drop a TP, you go chase them down, and now you have to deploy turrets. I hope you waited enough time between pushes, between, you know, attempts to push out the enemy that you have 3 turrets charged again, and I think that's going to be awkward for her. I think it's an interesting design place to explore, but I think she's got a little bit too much anti-synergy between healing with turrets and the speed boost from the teleporter there. I mean, there's enough total support utility in her hero, and hey, there's a TP, maybe it's to get back from spawn faster, maybe it's to jump on the enemies, whatever. There's turrets that heal people. I think there's potentially enough there, but I don't think that she's going to work as a hero, because it's again anti-synergy that we're looking at. Wall nerf is weird. We like actually want Bastions to break the wall reasonably or something. Do I think this has enough interesting bits or is an overall failure? I don't think they care. Like, I can answer that question, but I don't think Blizzard cares. I think this has become Blizzard's version of doing content. They're not actually willing to meaningfully change the game right now, other than the slight buffs and nerfs here or there. So they've decided that what they want to do is content until we get Overwatch 2, is they're going to do silly patches like this every couple months, where, you know, most of it isn't going to come into the game. Most of it isn't even trying to think about coming into the game, and they just want to go, hey, look how silly we can be. So I don't think it's trying to be successful, so it's not really fair for me to try to grade it on the rubric of, do I think there's enough interesting stuff in here? I do think there's some interesting stuff in here, though. I do think experimenting with giving more heroes charges of abilities is valid. That's already in the game. Maybe it shouldn't be, but it's already in the game. It's been in the game since launch with heroes like Tracer. So I think that's valid. I think the tank ideas could be interesting. I'm not opposed to them experimenting. Reinhardt doesn't work, but I'm not opposed to them experimenting with a more MMO RPG style of tanking. Again, those are notoriously hard to keep tanks in meta when that happens. When you do that, but I'm not opposed to trying it, but it doesn't look like they have quite a good enough grasp understanding of what makes that work when it does work to actually implement it here. Or they were not willing to change some heroes' identities enough to make it work. On the other hand, they changed Orisa's identity a ton, so clearly identity wasn't that big a deal for them. Yeah. The supports are sort of tame. Other than Symmetra's wild, obviously, in what we've done here. I don't think she ultimately works. Zenyatta's interesting. I'd like to see something like this. I'd like to see Moira have something similar to that with her orb as well. This change doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. You can't make... Like, Valkyrie being a steroid might be an option, but this version of Valkyrie as a steroid does not work. I like wall ride damage increase. The number is just too high. I don't really care about it. I know they're looking at shield bash distance because they don't want Brig to have a stun in Overwatch 2, so they want to be like, hey, let's do other stuff, and they're trying to experiment. I don't think ML7 did this hero. And these are somewhat tame, honestly. Yeah, so overall, there's enough here to be interesting. I'm not like, oh my goodness, worst experiment ever. The direction of tanking is interesting to see them even trying it. It's not what I'd recommend, but it's interesting to see them trying it. This I like. Yeah, no, I'm repeating myself at this point. But overall, it was an interesting one. It shows, you know, I think it's only fair to be real that at this point, they're not trying to balance the game in a foreseeable way. They're not looking at this. They're not even, you know, they're looking at this and going, let's do some Overwatch 2 experimentation and let's generate pipe buzz, whatever, around, oh, look at stuff. Oh, look, if you're a Genji main, you can go hop on the experimental and look, you have double dash now, that sort of thing. Curious who will want to play tanks like this. If you look at this, Wrecking Ball is playable. Experimenting with a blind is interesting. No one will want to play Roadhog. No one will want to play Winston. D.Va's just going to have a worse time. She might still work, but she actually needed a health buff to be playable like this, and she didn't get it for some reason. I mean, to be a little more playable like this, we'll say. I think people will experiment with Zarya, and it's possible that they'll work out. People might want to play Orisa. Orisa could open up some interesting strategies, truth be told. Orisa could open up some interesting strategies with the Fortify fortify, Orisa plus Lucio, let's go type thing. Orisa, Lucio, halt route, we win. Like, okay, that's there. I can see some tank play. Yeah. There will be people, sure, weird people. Zen changes going to Moira should go. Zen changes going to Moira should go to Moira for sure. I like that. Yeah. Okay. That's kind of what we're looking at. So what do you guys think? Like, I shared my thoughts. I look at this. I'm okay with them experimenting with tanks like this. They just clearly don't have the right grasp on it, and I don't think they'll take a second shot at it. So, that is sort of a failure. Maybe they'll take a second shot at it. The damage nerf, it's not how they've designed tanks for Overwatch. Support changes are sort of tame, except for Mercy's change, which I know people have cried for mass res, but it's not happening, and this is a bad version of Mercy. This is great. DPS are the most wildly powerful, I would say, in this, but I do like seeing them try to give some of these flex DPS a little bit more love, even if Echo wasn't one of them that needed love. Fair's boring, or not Fair's boring, Mei's boring here. Yeah. So yeah, overall, I think it's okay. I think they tried some interesting stuff here. They just, have some big misses in understanding on a few heroes. But what do you guys think? And if you're enjoying, drop a like, consider subscribing, but let me know in chat what you think, what your favorite buff or nerf is, all that good stuff. Will you tell us when you get asked to make an experimental patch? If I'm allowed to, yeah. And I should be allowed to. 3-second Valk makes no sense. Lamp is 1.5 seconds. Anything interesting here? Temporal's getting his pizza delivered? Maybe. That reload thing on Ana is a huge buff? Agreed. Most of the time people die when I have to hit reload because they're hard feeding. Yep. It significantly takes away, the ability for your tanks to, lose to consistent damage there. The inequality of life changes should come on live. The sleep stuff mostly. It might. But that would betray their habit of giving us a meme buff each time from this. That would be a real thing that people wouldn't really complain about. The Ana sleep changes here. It's showing up in the kill feed, it now having an icon above slept enemies, sleeping turrets. None of those, stopping the mech that was boosted, none of those would cause people to be raging or anything the way that the remechs or the shatters are. And it's funny that after getting remech and shatter, which are sort of both giant damage buffs on our experimental patch here, we have tanks do 50% less damage. But hey, we can't decide where the game is going. Okay. I think that's going to do it. If you guys are enjoying the content, please do drop a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. If you would like to get coaching, that is something I offer. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks. Temporal out.